That's crazy.
In 3.6, 3.7, and certain versions of 3.8.
Really?
Yeah, for like building.
Dude, I'll start upgrading. Well, I got, what happened was Frank just sent me a license, and then I put in my license folder in version 3.6, and now I can get it. I don't know if it updates every morning.
No, I tried.
Oh, you did? Start with Frank.
Get started.
I was looking all that because of him.
You gonna mark it all again this week?
Yeah, probably going back tomorrow. Yeah. It's still at the dealer, so we gotta pick him up. Guess we're just giving him a hard time. It's not even working.
I have that one.
Drop it off. Before it's time. This is, it's not zero. They didn't
Give a couple more minutes, and then kick it off.
That's a good idea.
You have a clicker or anything for your slides?
Just have a mouse.
Yeah.
Huh?
Dude, and we got authority, we won't let us hire early.
Do you need me to sit up there?
He lives in Jersey too. Like, dude.
I can sit up there and just
3:30,
do the
like,
slides if you want.
Yeah.
Does he stay for like days?
That'd be easier. If you want to stand and.
I mean, I don't know it well enough to know what slide's coming next, so I might have to peek on it, but for the most part, yeah. I still have to, I need to go through and get rid of all the animations. There's a bunch of animations in the presentation that I don't like.
I did that with mine too. I left like one or two animations, and the rest of them I just kind of popped them out.
So you'll see, especially there's like a keypad one where it's just heavy animations. It highlights everything. Yeah, you'll know it when you see it.
Yep.
Depends on what size.
Yes, sir.
That one, first, that one's the ASC.
Really?
Yeah.
On upgrade, bro? They got forced to hand. Did you get a backup?
I did get a backup.
I just priced one out today.
So it's just gonna run on standalone, I guess? That's it, and that's the quickest, because you really can't, I mean, actually,
We're not even.
I had four JSON on right now, Expressor, but it takes a long time to put it in. Because man, we gotta enter in like every word.
Now, you could just do that down the
Put
line.
sandbag check that shit.
It's like, trying not to like paint a target
Yeah.
like that.
Here's my thought.
You gotta go.
We haven't stopped years.
He's like arguing.
We can put it in that work. What's going on?
I gave this test and there were like, there were one or two questions and we were just like, well, and then there were others where he'd like, there would be like three answers
Saginaw
on there.
boxes,
and
yeah,
they were
right.
but it wasn't like.
They're rated across.
Like, three of the above.
Two,
It's
three,
like,
or fours.
I would pick one that was more
importantly,
that was
right.
He's like, well, that's wrong. Well, no, it's actually
Now, I can check another one, I have bypass the problem. We have another guy from Maryland here who has a straight side, for X-ray.
Yeah.
The number two, it's that's it. I'll do it.
Just landed them tossing. All those questions. Yeah.
Yeah, Tom's your sales guy, but yeah, that's a problem. You guys ready? Let me let Will know that we're ready.
See you guys, sir.
It's like, which one is the impeller?
Cool.
Or 2 lines.
It's like, which way is the impeller? It's like, yeah.
Kick it off here in a minute.
He's gonna go double check.
All right, Will's gonna start the recording, then we'll get going. Okay.
Sounds good.
Nobody sits up front.
Well, we didn't set up the table. We figured it.
I always sit
Yeah.
up front.
Yeah.
For one, I can't see anymore.
Yeah, I hear you.
So as soon as Will lets us know, we'll get going here.
Okay.
We're putting this on our YouTube, I think.
Nice.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Every bit helps, right?
the week has been going well, apparently.
Yeah. 2023. Right?
I started this business in '99, we didn't have internet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
fax machines and, you know,
I know.
art books and everything like that.
Now it's crazy if you use a fax. Like we have
Has a fax?
like one customer who still faxes in orders.
Really?
I'm like, wait.
We have a
You
sales
don't
guy
have an
that does
email?
that. The owner's, the old owner's son is still, he's not even allowed in the office. Thanks. All right, guys, we're gonna get going. So we're gonna do some VFD training today on the Franklin Electric VFDs. I'm George Sable. If nobody knows me, you guys have probably trained your predecessors on other drives earlier. So, but you guys take it away. Any questions? Be interactive. Ask questions. Don't wait till later. If you have something on your mind or you had a situation you were in, just ask it so we can rip through it. I think these guys will be able to help us out.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Boston. I'm the inside sales rep for Franklin. So I handle the HVAC water division. So working with a lot of starters, soft starters, VFDs that are operating pumps. So chill water, hot water pumps, all kinds of stuff. Boosters, cooling tower applications. So Andy's our field service engineer. He's going to be the one kind of hosting this training, but I'll be kind of the main contact for sales support, things like that. So yeah, so with that, I'll just let Andy go ahead and take it away.
All right. You want to come sit up here and do the button? All right, so we're going to do an overview of our drive, which is our new drive, the X drive. We have a couple legacy drives that are the P drive and Q-Link still out there you might see. This replaces both of them. So if you have any issues with those, most likely it'll migrate over to this drive. Go ahead and hit the first one. So all of our panels are going to be UL 508A, which means they're considered low voltage, which is under 1,000. Really, we don't go over this is 600 volt. If it's 575 or less, we'll do it. Anything over than that, we're not going to do it. Let me see. Go to the next one. Okay. So this is the things we're going to cover. We'll go over a little bit of the marketing material, the comparison to the legacy products, understanding the part number of the drive. We'll go into just VFD basics as to what a VFD is. Go into a little bit about the UL approvals and how it relates to enclosures and the panels themselves. And then we'll get into the actual VFD overview where we're going to go into the different types of panels we have with this VFD in it, the different packages, the hardware of the drive, navigating the keypad, seeing some terminal blocks, how we set up our terminal blocks in the packages, transducers, and then we have a manual walkthrough and some other stuff we'll do. This presentation is approximately 60 slides, so I want to try to fly through it as fast as we can. This is what no one wants to do, and then we can move over to the demo drives and do basic setups, change stuff, walk through the manual, and we have a quick start. We don't have a physical quick start for you, but we do have one up here. I'll pull it up and we'll go through that. That quick start comes with every drive, so you guys will have one if one's installed. That'll be your best friend next to the manual. If you ever need marketing material or a manual or a quick start or a spec sheet, if you go to franklinwater.com, we have everything for the X drive that's released in one place. This is the quick start guide that you'll see. We just went over it. It's 20 pages, so it's 10 front to back. So it's got a lot of information in there, probably more than you need for a quick start, but you can probably get away with not having the manual with that. And then submittals and stuff is on Boston's side.
You gonna go over the Bluetooth card?
Yes, yeah, and while I'm here, while everyone's here, I'll help you get it downloaded, and all 4 of these demos have the Bluetooth card, so we'll try to interact, make sure everyone can get it attached to it. All of those support materials are on the app as well, so you'll be able, if you don't have a quick start guide or a manual, you'll have access to it in your phone. So this is what the X drive is a across the board kind of general drive, and the P drive was the one we had before it. It was a little bit limited for 200 volt, and for 2 and 230 we only got to 40 horse, and then we had a full range of 460 and a half range of 575. For the X drive we have 1 to 100 horsepower, 125, and then it goes all the way up to 700. Let's see, is that 1 to 40? Is that for the packages? So the drive itself goes all the way to 700 horsepower, and then our packages will cap out at 100 and 125, depending on the voltage. We'll go back one more real quick. The P drive did not have BACnet in it. You had to have a card, but it did have Modbus. The X drive has BACnet and Modbus built into it. We have an Ethernet IP card for Modbus if you want that, but the BACnet is the RS-45. So the Q-Link was our other in-house drive. This was a small cap drive, so it had a little bit more of a limited range, but the functionality was all of our in-house functionality, and that has gotten transferred into the X drive. So the X drive is a combo of those two drives into one. Now the Bluetooth is a card, so it's an option card. It's not built into the drive, but you can get it on any package, bypass or standalone drive.
Does that come automatically on bypass?
No, you have to ask for it.
The XD1, so the NEMA ones with disconnect, NEMA ones with bypass, it's built in as a standard.
Oh, they did put it as a standard option? Okay.
3Rs, it's an option card.
So yeah, the big difference between the X drive and the Q-Link is the ranges. The Q-Link was kind of limited in its range. So this has all the functionality in a bigger and more robust package. When you look at the side of the drive, you'll see a sticker that has the part number. CXD just means it's the Cirrus X drive. The 110 is always going to be your amperage, so you know the rating, and then really the most important piece of information is does it say 2, 4, or 6, so it tells you the voltage of the drive. So this is just a graph explaining what VFDs do and why, why you would want a VFD over and across the line starter. You can control the speed, and your energy is greatly reduced. It's far more efficient. All the drives can do phase conversion. If you have a panel, it has to be set up for single or three phase. You can't just switch it to single phase in the field. But if you have just the drive, you can go ahead and do all the drives will do the phase conversion. I need to update that. That's the old P drive. So this is the input circuit generally. This is from our P drive, but this is kind of just an across the board how VFDs convert your voltage. You have three-phase AC power coming in, goes through your line reactor, goes through a rectifier bridge, which turns it from AC voltage to DC. The drive stores it using the pre-charge circuit and your capacitors. Some of the drives have a built-in DC choke. It just depends on the size. And then the drive just chops it up and sends it out as a fake AC wave to your motor that it can control. And that's how you get your basic control. So across the line, you're going full speed, and you don't have a choice. Once you have a VFD, it breaks it up for you so that you can control it. And this is the signal that ends up going out to the motor. So all of these are just on-off signals, and it changes how long it's on and off. And when it does that, it ends up getting a wave, and it tricks the motor into thinking it's an AC sine wave. This is an example of what I'm talking about. So all it does is change the pulse width. Now this is obviously just it's either 20% or 100%, but what it does is it varies that to get you your wave. Just right here. So in the middle, you'll see it's open longer. In the beginning, it's just little bursts, and so it just continues to do that thousands and thousands of times to get you a nice clear wave. All right, for the enclosures, just kind of some general why you would put it in an enclosure. You want to keep everybody safe. The enclosures do a pretty good job of containing any sort of small bursts or fires or whatever. The environment is going to determine it. We have NEMA 1, NEMA 3R, NEMA 12, NEMA 4, and NEMA 4X, all dependent on the environment, and then 4X is usually for corrosion or hazardous environments. Yeah, just a good picture of critters we've gotten back. If they get in there, you can say goodbye to the drive. So we try to keep them out, but as you can tell, they always get in. Here is the UL sticker. So this just kind of breaks down what all is on the UL sticker. I'm not sure if we have one of these in the demo units or not. But this is going to tell you everything. If you ever call tech support, they're going to reference this sticker. So if they ever ask you for like the panel ID number, it's going to be this. Obviously, we've got our name. If you ever want to look up the UL information, this is the UL number will always be there if you want to put that in. Our part number is going to be right here. So this reference is from a starter, but your VFD package would be here. Max amps is going to be the maximum on the input, and then all of your loads will be broken out. So you can always, if you have a panel, you can always see what load you need and what it's supposed to be to get to the 34 in this case. So these are not and, it's or. So this can do this one or this one or this one. And then we have a small jumper in there to change the voltage. So all you need to know is that the max amps is the input, and then all your load information is right here. The enclosure rating is going to be here. Even if the enclosure itself says something like 4x, this is the rating of the panel. We can use different enclosures in different combinations to get NEMA ratings, so this is the one that you need to pay attention to. And then they will all have hand signatures of the people that tested it and inspected it. And you keep going. Do we have a clock? 9/11. Just keep an eye on this.
Okay. Yeah, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to just go ahead and jump in. We don't have to do this super formal. We don't have to wait till the end or anything like that.
Yeah, feel free to interrupt if something comes up. All right, here's the overview of the drive itself. That's the full product range from the smaller ones to the bigger ones. This is the one that you're going to have on your demo units, but this is the one that gets all the way to the 700 horse. In our HVAC division, we have a NEMA 1 drive with disconnect, which is basically what you're looking at. Normally, they wouldn't have all the stuff we have in there. That's just for the demo, but that's the size, the back panel, the enclosure. That's what you would get. You can get it with bypass. The first bypass panel is a little bit bigger than that, and then they go up from there. And then we also have cooling towers, but cooling towers are almost always going to end up being in some sort of enclosure like this. We do have a couple that are like this, but you have to get the smallest cooling tower just because it has so many different options built into it. For industrial, it's just kind of all over the place. Usually industrial is just drives. Like there's a drive on the wall and they know what they're going to do with it. And then for pumps, Franklin has a very, very large array of pump products, depending on who your salesman is what you're going to get. But we have standard panels for submersible and centrifugal that are already sized and ready to go for those two applications with Franklin motors.
So what we've run into, guys, is that if you have like a booster, domestic water booster in a building that needs to be replaced, we can do that directly with Franklin.
Yep, and a booster would be a centrifugal package, so it's going to come with a line reactor. It's going to come sized for everything. You're going to get an HOA switch. Yeah, it's going to be.
Yeah, so we can do just the drives, or the entire panel, or the panel and pumps and everything.
Yep.
As a skid. So we have access to
Okay, here's what they all look like. NEMA 1. So NEMA 1 just means you can't stick your finger into anything that's going to shock you. That's the vents. They're all sized for that. NEMA 12 is dust protection. 3R is very similar to 12, but it's more for rain. There's I can't remember the actual angle, but they basically spray this thing with a wide range of water, and it has to make sure that whatever water does get in has to be able to get out without damaging anything. And then 4X is a completely sealed unit, stainless steel. Usually stainless steel. It can be fiberglass, but you're not going to see a drive in a fiberglass enclosure from us. It's too heavy and it's not reliable. Boston, you're going to have to back me up if this is still, I know these are constantly changing, the panel offerings for the drive disconnects. Yep. Half horse to 50 for 208, half horse to 60 for 230. Is this still accurate, or is it?
All the ratings are correct. The only thing that's different is for our NEMA 1 offerings, they have the FE Connect Bluetooth card, like we talked about earlier. And then they all also come with a 5% line reactor as a standard. So the only options that you really have for those would be the Modbus TCP IP card, if you want to add that, or an output reactor or output filter, depending on what the distance is from the drive to the motor. That's really what the determining factor would be for those. Typically, they're not really needed for HVAC applications because usually the motor is going to be pretty close to the drive. But there are those odd circumstances where it could be maybe a couple hundred feet or something like that, where we'd recommend having a reactor on the output side of it.
The 575 comes with it, right?
Yep.
So all the 575 panels will come with an output filter, just because you're so close to where you can start damaging the insulation of the motor. We put one in there without asking. We have them available for 460, and technically we have them available for 208 and 230, but we did in-house testing, and for both of these, the output filters really don't do anything. So you will see a spec. There are lots of specs that call for output filters, so they may tell you that you have to have one. But if they do any testing, they're not really going to do anything. The spikes coming out of the VFD don't get high enough where the filter is going to do anything. So this is basically the same thing, but this is the 3R version. Again, Boss may have to verify the sizing. I don't think we're going up to 500 horsepower right now. I think they just dropped that.
Yeah, I think they dropped it down to like 400. I have to double check. All the options are the same.
Yep. So pilot light, red, green. Yep. So basically we have green run lights, red fault lights, panel disconnect, the communication card like I talked about. This is for Modbus only. 3 and 5% line reactors. The bigger drives for X drive have a DC choke that's equivalent to 3%. So you don't need a line reactor, but if you need 5%, we put a 3% line reactor in there and the drive becomes 5% equivalent. Like we were just talking about, we have output reactors and output filters depending on the distance between the VFD and the motor. We have EMI filters if needed. Panel heaters are a big one. The freestanding foot kits. We have the keyed enclosure latches if you want them. We have keypad covers, which is this. We have clear ones, and we have the solid ones that are lockable. We have speed pots. You can also get a speed pot that we have a window big enough that'll fit the keypad and a speed pot in there. Surge suppressors, e-stops, and start-stop controls. So this is the same kind of thing with the bypass attached to it. A more limited range and a little bit limited on the options because of so much stuff that comes in there, but the one addition is the bypass light will be amber. All the other stuff is the same.
Yeah, same thing on this slide too. The NEMA ones come with the 5% line reactor, the Bluetooth card. The 460 rating actually is 100 horsepower, not 125. We recently came into an issue where the NEMA 1 enclosure wouldn't fit the largest 125 horsepower drive, so we had to knock that down to 100. But everything else on here is going to be accurate.
So this is what the bypass looks like. So it's just like this, but it's got a longer bottom end on it, and this is what you're going to expect to see. So you can just click through the prompts. This is going to be your secondary fuse protection when it gets delivered. This should be open. So if you don't get power, this is normally the first thing to look for. All your terminal blocks are going to be right here. Up underneath this is the transformer. This is the control relay that comes in there. This is going to be your disconnect, which is our MMS. It's got two of these, one for the VFD isolation and one for the main incoming. So the one with the handle is your main incoming power. The one without it is the one that goes just to your VFD. And then we have our two contactors. Down here you will have a sticker. You can't really see it in this picture, but there's a white sticker that says input, and there's another white sticker that will say motor, and it'll tell you which one to go into. For the bypass panels, you're going to double up on one set of wires. There's jumpers that go between the two contactors. You just feed the motor into one of them. All right, here's the input and output breakdown from the drive. All of the inputs have multiple functions, and so there's a dip switch that switches between the two. This is how it's going to be set up default. ACI is 0 to 10 or 4 to 20 with a dip switch. AVI 1, 0 to 10, 4 to 20 with a dip switch. So the same functionality, two options. We will wire to ACI by default. So if you ever start a drive, and we'll go over this, but one of the protections is if this is set up to look at that and it doesn't see anything, it will trip. It'll say loss of ACI loss. That's one of the common things you'll see with a panel on startup, is that it's set up to look for this and they haven't wired it in yet. So the very first time you power the drive on, it'll say ACI loss. And it's just telling you that it's looking for something on this input and doesn't see anything. AVI 2 is dedicated to 0 to 10. We have a couple of outputs, AFM 1 and AFM 2. Just like ACI and AVI, they're the same thing. They can do 0 to 10 or 4 to 20 output, but they're set by dip switches. And they're programmable, so we can look at the, when we go through the manual, we'll go through the options, but they're all multifunction, so you can change what they're referencing.
Did you have a question? Me? Yeah.
You can change what they're programmed to, so you can do basic stuff like what's the speed of the motor, or you can do things like replicate your input. So if you want to make sure that the drive is actually seeing your input and you're giving it a 0 to 10, you can have one of these replicate the 0 to 10 so that your system sees it coming back from the drive. The positive 10 volts is just a power supply. You're welcome to use it. We use this in most of our panels going to a terminal block for you to use. But there's a 20 milliamp max, so just be aware it's really just for small sensors and stuff. And then ACM is going to be the common. For the digital inputs, it's all MI1 through MI8. On our old drives, it was M1 through M8, so they just have the I in there. Forward and reverse are dedicated inputs that are pre-programmed. Reverse is locked out. You'll have to go in and tell it not to be locked out, but it's just an input for the control. For the communications, it's all SG plus, SG minus, and ground. There's also a 24 volt power. We do not wire this to terminals or anything. It's always going to be on the drive itself. And it's got a little jumper right here that goes to our COM. And we normally use the NPN setup so that all you need is digital inputs. And that's part of that setup, is leaving that jumper in there. So if you pull, if you get a drive and you're putting jumpers somewhere and it's just not registering, one of the first things to look for is that jumper. People will pull it not knowing what it is. The outputs, we have the multifunction single pole double throw relay, and then we have the double throw is going to be dedicated to, well, it's not dedicated, but it's defaulted as your fault relay. So you'll have a normally open and a normally closed fault relay by default, and then we have two other single throw relays that are multifunction, and we'll go through the list of all the options. STO1, STO2, and SCM1 and SCM2 are hardware emergencies that don't require any program, and that's these over here. They're jumpered from the factory. The only one I've seen used so far is STO1 and STO2 that was used for a fire suppression system. But if you pull that, there's no amount of programming that will get the drive to run. It's DOA until it's replaced.
Any of those are defaulted to a fireman's mode, is that correct?
No, so these ones are defaulted as a hardware protection, but that's used primarily for the fire suppression systems. If you see anything in a spec that requires a physical connection that shuts the drive down, that's what you're looking for. We do have fireman's override stuff in the drive that you can also program. We have inputs and stuff.
Okay, separate of those.
Yeah, separate of these. And then we have two RJ45 connectors that are right here for your communication. These are connected in parallel to SG plus and SG minus. So it's the same thing, it's just a different connection, so you can use a Cat5 cable. All right, so here's the overview of what you're looking at. The keypad's up here. The control I/O board is here. Where you're gonna wire your input is on the left. Motor is on the right. They're clearly labeled UVW, RST. You have a ground on each side, so you don't have to share anything. The DC bus is shown below here. Unlike the P drive, this drive has a cover here so that people do not wire to the DC bus unless they actually know what they're doing and they know that they need to wire to it. We don't want to have anyone wiring to the DC bus if they don't know what they're doing. Standard installation does not require touching that. There's another RJ45 connector here. This is not connected to the other ones. This is for the keypad. If one of you guys want, just pull the top of a keypad out. It just slides out. So that little male connector in there, if you want to extend the keypad, you just pop that out. It's a standard Cat5 cable. You just pop that out, put however long you want, and run the keypad wherever you need to go. Slot 3, right here, we have I/O expansion cards, and we also have, I think, a 120 volt power supply card. That would go up here. I have to double check the ones that go up here. And then down here, this is where the Bluetooth card would be. Slot 1 is for the Bluetooth card. It's also for the Ethernet card, so it's one or the other. All right, so here's the key. This is another one with a bunch of animations, yeah. This is a keypad. I'm not going to go through all the animations because everyone should kind of be able to go through a keypad pretty basically. You have an escape key basically anywhere you're in the menu. If you hit escape, it's going to end up back at this screen. The F keys are predetermined by the things that are above them. So F1 is jog,
F2 goes through a bunch of view screens. If you keep hitting it, it'll go through a bunch. If you guys want to right now, you can. Later on, we'll go through it to show you what it goes through. And then F3 gets into your fault logs. Menu just rifles through all the different menu options. Back takes you back one screen. Obviously, arrows are arrows, enter key is an enter key. We have hand and auto commands here. These are for local control. There is a set. If you have something like the demo unit that has a handoff auto switch, we go into the drive on set 60 and tell it to do this via digital inputs. Once that happens, these don't work anymore. So if you come up to a drive and it's in auto and you're hitting hand and it's not doing anything, it's just because the drive has been programmed to look for the digital inputs and it won't let you overwrite it with the keypad. If you are in local mode, you can hit the start button, the stop button, change forward and reverse. Again, if you want reverse, you're gonna have to go in and make sure that the drive is enabled to go reverse. And then this is a big thing for troubleshooting, just understanding what the screen is telling you. So all of these things are gonna tell you exactly how the drive is set up. So number one is your operation status. It's gonna say run, stop, fault, things like that. This is the full list. Mostly what you're gonna see is run stopped, timer, and maybe control by PID2. I mean, all of these can come up, but mostly what you're going to see is run or stop. Over here on this, it says K/K. The demo unit should say T/V1. So what that's telling you is, so T would be terminal control, which is the inputs. V1 is AV1. So these are wired to look at the speed pot on the AV input. So that's why it's set up like that. KK would just be keypad. And then one that you will commonly see is C, because that's your ACI input. And then anyone that's running a PID, it will say K, because the PID gets its pressure setting from the keypad. Number 4 up here will tell you if it's in hand or auto. Number 5 is user selectable, but by default it's going to be your speed. You can go between H, which is the output speed, P, which is the PID set point, or F, which is the hertz set point. You'll see these little arrows. They should be highlighted on your top row right now. And if you hit left and right, this will change between H and F. F is telling you what the set point is for the speed. H is telling you what it's really doing. So all the H's should be 0 right now. The F's are going to be all over the place. Output current, just telling you what your amperage is. And then number 7 is user selectable. So there's arrow keys here, and then in the drive menu, we can go in and program what goes there. So you can add stuff if there's more information that you need. And if you go back one more again. And let me double check if that's right, page 43. There we go, okay, it's 49. All right, so I need to update that. So yeah, this is gonna be on page 49 in the manual. This is also on the quick start guide. Oh, these are the bound ones though. These are the gold. Here we can throw, just in case someone comes in or something. Yeah, we can move to the next one. We're good. Oh, we're flying through it. Which one are we in? Main menu. Yeah, okay. Okay, so from the main menu, let's see, you have the parameter groups, quick start, copy parameters, fault record. You can change the language, set the time. This has a real-time clock in it. When you're using Bluetooth, it will use your phone to sync the clock. If you're not doing that, you just go in and set the time. You can lock the keypad out with a pin. If you forget the pin and you call us to unlock it, the drive will be reset to factory defaults. You'll have to reprogram the whole thing, but it can be done. It has a built-in PLC. You can copy the PLC program. We don't use the PLC for anything right now.
If you have someone that's good with PLCs and can write a code, you're welcome to use it. It is functional. We just don't use it for anything. And then you can go into the display setup, which is just going to tell you this is going to be the different options that you can change in what you're looking at on the screen. So if you want to load the parameters, if you hit the menu button, it'll take you into the initial menu, and then you hit back. It'll go into like kind of the main menu of the drive itself. You go down to copy parameters, and if you hit enter, you'll see that I've got some random ones kind of set in there. When you go in here and you follow this I don't want you to load or anything right now because it's just going to mess up how we have it set up. But you can go in there, and not only does it have different sections, I think it's 7 of them that you can save, but you can name them. So you can be in a keypad and you can have it named as like default or something, and then take it keypad from drive to drive to drive and load it up, and you know that that's your base programming. I like that. I use that for the demos because I can have the demo set up for different types of customers, like pump customers or HVAC customers, and I can flip them between the two.
So can the keypad be programmed like 24 volts?
What do you mean?
So can you just, some drives you can put 24 volts to a couple terminals and just program the drive before it goes to the job site?
Nothing like that. There are programs, like we have a Delta program that you can use your computer to load the drive, and it just uses the Ethernet cable or the communication. So it's not through 24 volts or anything, but there are ways to quickly load the drive. Oh, you can just skip through this, yeah.
There's probably a
And this is something that we can walk through once we're doing the kind of demo stuff. I can walk you through how to do this, and we can change everything in there and load them up. So this is just kind of walking through a basic setup. Even though the drive has, like hundreds of different things you could do, it's really 10 or 20 things that you're going to be sticking to. Most of the stuff is you're always going to set 0, 0. Almost anytime you get a drive from us in a panel, it's going to be set to basic. The other ones, supply fan, all that stuff, they're great for the drive by itself, but we use a lot of relay logic, and so we just set the drive up in basic, and we know how we want the drive to work. But if you have a drive by itself, the supply, like basically all the quick start ones are going to default your acceleration time and protections and things like that for the industry standards of whatever you're setting up. You're always going to have to do set 0, 0. The motor horsepower is going to be defaulted to the size of the drive. The motor FLA should be from the NEC chart of that horsepower. The RPM is going to be defaulted at 3,600, I believe. Voltage is going to be defaulted at whatever the drive is. Motor frequency is going to be 60. And then you'll always need to set 7 and 8 for how you want auto to work. And then I think 9 and 10 are hand. So those are ones that you need to go through. Underload is going to be defaulted on. What this is looking for, it's for pump and HVAC, but they call them 2 different things. In pump, they call it dry run. In HVAC, it's like broken belt. Basically, if you have a fan and you can test it, what you want to do is run the motor without the fan physically attached to see what amperage the motor is going to pull. And you can set your underload at 1 hertz below your max frequency. And then you go in and set the underload level to whatever that amperage is that you detected. That way, if the motor ever runs at full speed with that setting, it knows that your belt's broken.
Does it do a default, or do you have a program?
There's a default in there, and it's defaulted on. So that's another one that you might get that trip on a first start. Even though you didn't set anything up, it might say underload, and that's why. It's just a default protection that's better to have on. It's better to have the customer opt out of that than have to go in and set it up. So remotely controlling the VFD, so this is if you get a package from us. There's 2 things that you're going to see. If you have a drive by itself, it's just going to be forward and DCM. And so any sort of relay or jumper, that's going to be your run command. If you have a cooling tower, it's going to say FE and FS, which is just fan enable and fan start. And then for bypasses, it's just going to be terminals 1 and 2. They're all doing the same thing. They're all closing forward and DCM. It's just that the cooling towers and the bypasses have some relay logic in between there that'll lock it out under certain circumstances. And then as I was saying before, here's that plus 10 terminal. All of our panels, it doesn't matter if it's a disconnect, bypass, anything we put together, we are going to wire the VFD's analog controls to terminal blocks just so it's easier for you guys to get to.
So, Boston, I have a question. Do we have access to the cooling tower panels?
Not the cooling tower panels. We have, yeah, I know. Yeah, that's something we can talk about. Yeah, it's a side conversation.
All right. I'd like to see what that comes with.
Yeah.
All right, so just basic setups of how you would set up a pressure transducer or a temperature sensor. It's kind of straightforward. This is the same going to the drive or the terminal blocks. That's why we have it set up that way. It doesn't matter if you have a standalone drive or the panel, it's going to be the same. They're labeled the same. You're either going to go from power to signal, or if you have a speed pot, this is kind of like what they work. Speed pots are set up very similar to the 3-wire transducer.
So if you guys are doing gut pressure, that top one's the best way to do it.
Yep.
Right? You don't need anything else except the drive and your sensor.
Yep.
And with 2 wires run to the sensor, you get your feedback and everything's already.
Yep, and if you're using shielded cable, you just lay on the ground right here, and that's what that's referencing as a shielded cable.
Do you have to jump something on the drive though?
Nope. If you have a 24-volt transducer, it's just as simple, but you're using 24 instead of the 10, and then you've got your ACI. This one, you would have to jump the ACM and DCM, and then your shield goes to ground.
That's most likely what you guys would use in the field.
And then, what time is it? 9:37. All right, we're flying through this. Yeah, does anyone have any questions or anything that I kind of blew past that?
You said everything comes default basic parameters, right?
Yeah, most of the stuff we put together, we're going to use basic.
So if we need to use a PID loop, do we have to go to a different?
No. All of the defaults, you can set everything. There's nothing that gets locked out. There's nothing that changes. It just gives you a better starting point. So basic is going to have one set of defaults that's basically 0. It's not going to be set up for anything. Okay. And then when you get into like the supply fans and all that, it changes your starting point. Okay. So there's less things that you have to go through and set up. So like a prime example is we have a submersible pump in here, and if you set that, it's not going to work with any fan. It's got a 2-second acceleration time. Right. Like there's just a bunch of stuff that wouldn't work. And so that's what it does. It just goes through and changes all your acceleration times and your normal protections settings, so that you wouldn't have to change them. You can just keep going.
What's the availability of these drives?
So right now, we have stock.
Yeah.
And I can list off what if you want to know what we have in stock.
Yeah, it just depends on size.
It depends on size and voltage and stuff like that. Guy asked me about a 7.5 horsepower with bypass NEMA 3R. We don't have that in stock, but I have 3 7.5 horsepowers with bypass in stock. I have varying other ones. So if we have to order it to NEMA 3R, it's 8 to 12 weeks. Okay. Right now, that's pretty good compared to everybody else, right? We just got an order for a 15 horsepower NEMA 3R. But the other option is we could throw a bypass in a NEMA 3R enclosure. We can usually get the NEMA 3R enclosure in a week or 2, rather than them doing a whole setup like that. Sorry, guys. But that'll get it to you quicker. We have standard drives in stock. We get a list every morning of what we have. So right now I have 2 horsepower, 460, 1 horsepower, 230, all the way to 50 horsepower, 460 standard drives in stock. And then with bypasses, I have 3, 5, 7.5, 15, 20, 40 horsepower in stock right now.
Yes, especially right now. Some other brands are telling you, 36, 52 weeks.
Yeah.
They're 52 to 64 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't have anything that's that long. Right. Even our longest lead times are 15, 17 weeks, and that's usually for something that's custom built. Include something that we have to get from a supplier or something like that. Anything that would be a standard unit, like George said, 8 to 12 weeks is pretty standard for those.
And we have, they sell starters too, so we're trying
Yeah, we do.
to supplement, if you needed something right away to run something, you probably have a starter that would work to get you by until the drive comes in. or something like that.
Yep, and starters are a lot quicker too.
Yeah.
A lot of our, especially like NEMA 1 starters, usually a couple weeks, and they'd be built and shipped out of Oregon. So, any other questions? No?
We're flying through this, so we're gonna get a lot of time on the demo unit, so that's good. All right, so if you're using Modbus, we don't do it.
Anybody here will use Modbus on a drive.
Okay, yeah, so if you're dealing with someone that's telling you the drive's Modbus doesn't work, they're wrong. It works just fine. It's wiring, or it's the actual program they're using. If you call our tech support are not communication guys either. They're gonna read out of the manual. I have simply Modbus set up on my computer at my office, so I can go through and do different tests. If someone says it's not working when I do this, or I can't read this, or I don't understand what it's telling me, I can hook it up and walk through it. But for the most part, like you guys just said, we're not communication guys. Those guys are in their own world. We just need to make sure that the drive is able to communicate in a way that they can understand. And then these are the names and function codes, but we don't really need to go over it. There's the defaults. Really the only thing that would change is your 8N1 RTU. This is just the stop bits and the parity stuff. This is pretty standard that most setups use this, and then if it's not that, they know that they need to go in and change it. And then comm speed, again, 9.6 is pretty standard, but they'll be all over the place depending on the different building or system or whatever they're doing. And then just like if they were using BACnet or something, you're going to use your SG plus, SG minus, and your signal ground, or the RG45 connector, RJ45. Oh, falling over. And then here's the parameters.
We don't need to go through.
Yeah, we don't need to go through it.
Yeah, I'll just skip those.
And go again. Same kind of thing. Same with BACnet, I assume. Like you guys.
Ton of BACnet.
Ton of BACnet. Okay.
Ton of BACnet.
So
For HVAC, that's the standard.
okay, I'm not going to read this because you guys know what BACnet is. But again, you can use SG plus, SG minus, or the RJ45 socket. Just like Modbus, I am not a BACnet expert. I do have BACnet on my computer, so I will be able to hook it up, look for things, see if something's not working the way it's supposed to. But for the most part, the BACnet guys are going to need to know how to troubleshoot BACnet stuff. Almost always it comes down to wiring, putting too many things on a trunk, having termination switches on, halfway through the line, things like that.
Is there dip switches for the MAC address, or do you have to set it up in the...
It's all inside the drive.
All right.
Yep. And then here is the parameters that you'll see from the drive. This is just kind of compiled from the manual. We have a quick start that shows you how to install or how to set up BACnet, and it goes through the wiring and all the options and stuff, and I'll show that to you. So just like Modbus, it's got a bunch of defaults in there that should be pretty normal for your industry standards, but again, depending on who you're working with, they'll use something else and they'll need to change it. Go ahead and go to the next one. FE Connect. So this is the app. If you guys want, you can do it right now. All you have to do is look up FE Connect in the App Store. Let's see what it looks like.
Yeah, it looks just like that picture. Bottom right of that picture.
Well, there's multiple. It is not that picture. Yeah, it should be that one. So if you go to the App Store, look up FE Connect. Here, I'll just kind of walk around and show you guys. It's this one. They've released. I don't know if you guys. It's this one right here. That picture. Mm-hmm. It looks like this.
Which one?
This one right here where my thumb's at.
Oh, okay.
It's got that. It's blue with the little white.
Ah, that's okay.
All right.
So if you guys call in for a drive, standard drive, make sure your sales guy puts the Bluetooth card on it if you want it. Right? It's under $100.
Highly recommend it, even if you don't plan on using Bluetooth. Highly recommend it, just because of what I'll show you, the support stuff. It's got all your manuals, all your quick starts, and all that at your fingertip. And it can also pull up. You guys probably won't use any of the other products we have, but we have a couple of starter lines for the pump market that also connect to this, so you can look up those pieces of information. So basically, the app is designed to make it as streamlined as possible for whoever's setting it up. It's got tons and tons of, it's got way more information than you could ever need. This main screen from your dashboard, I'll show you, when you start scrolling, it's way too much information. So it's very helpful if you're troubleshooting. Everything you could possibly need is there. You just need to know what you're looking for. You can create templates, just like using the keypad to copy and paste. You can use templates with the app and copy a setup over. It has fault logging with your time and date stamp, so long as you set the drive up to have accurate time. It's got built-in job logs. You can like name the site. Like when you go into the drive, you can name the location and the site. So when you're looking through your phone, you can just pull up a drive as long as you're within range. And then you can view and email fault logs. You can access the tech support through the app, and you can either do it via email or a phone call. You can email any of the logs. You can do fault logs and the change logs. One of the things that I like for troubleshooting along with the fault logs is there's a change log in here, so you can just go in and see what settings have been changed back and forth. I really like that so that you don't have to ask if someone was in there. You can just go look. And normally you'll see one or two things that's causing your problem. And it's available on iOS and Android, which is more complicated than it seems. All right, go ahead and go on.
The other thing that I would note is that we have a lot of people that call and ask about, like, do you guys have a startup wizard? We don't have a startup wizard on the drive, but this is kind of our version of it. So, like George said, it's less than $100 to add BACnet or Bluetooth to it. Connect to your phone. You can literally do the whole setup, full startup in a matter of minutes. So, if you guys are at AHR, we had a nice little booth with a demo. And that's pretty much what Andy and I did for about 3 days. Was having a group of people come by and we would just demo how to get it set up, how to pull your fault logs, how to do templates, which are super nice. So if you guys have jobs with 10, 15 fans that are all going to be the exact same size, exact same setup, you do one on the app, you can save it as a template, and then just connect to the next drive, upload it, connect to the next one, upload it. So huge time saver. Yeah, that's the big feature that I like to stress on the BACnet app is huge.
The black screwdriver.
Yep.
And then can you just make sure? I know that cover's loose, right?
Yeah.
The bottom one.
Oh, I don't want.
Yeah, here. If you want to take this and just pass the screwdriver around. In order to access the Bluetooth chip, you got to take the bottom cover off. So if you just want to pass that screwdriver around, everyone can pop that off. I will, once we're done with this presentation, I'll run you through that AHR presentation that he was talking about, where we basically hook a phone up and just go through everything you can do with the app real quick, and then you guys can play with it.
All right, we good? Next slide?
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, that was just a quick reference as to what the Bluetooth app is. We'll play with it in detail. The replacement components on the drive are very basic. You have a keypad, the fan, the control board. Anything that's deep inside the drive, we're not going to have a replacement for. It's a replace the drive.
So warranty?
What is it? Is it?
We have a 5-year warranty on parts.
Okay.
So, yeah. So if you guys get it.
And then what's the process?
Step one would be calling tech support to troubleshoot it, because a lot of times the stuff can be solved in the field. Right. Our tech support team would create a case in our system. We can use that case to create an RMA, which we'll send to Brody, which you guys can use that to send the drive back to us. Okay. In the meantime, you can purchase a new drive, ship that out as the replacement. Once we get the failed drive back to us, we'll inspect it, evaluate it. If it passes warranty, then we'll just credit the account.
All right. So what we run into, guys, is that you can't pull the drive off the wall and just say it's bad. We need a case number. and then we need the guys at tech support to say it's bad, get the case number, then you bring the drive back, and then we can get you a new drive.
Yeah.
Like
And
I said,
you go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, the tech support team can usually solve things in the field. You know, a lot of times it's, you know, a programming, that the parameter's set wrong, or, you know, something silly like that. It can be easily solved, so that's kind of the whole point of having people call. We want at least an attempt at troubleshooting before we start bringing stuff back to warranty evaluate it. So.
Yeah, and I, like, just kind of double up on that, I would say, you know, 60 to 70% of people that call in and say their drive is dead, it's not. If a drive's dead, it's kind of obvious it won't power on, nothing's happening. But if someone's saying that it's stuck doing something or just can't make it do something, the drive's fine, there's programming. Most of the time, what our tech support's gonna do is they're gonna listen to what has happened, what's been changed, how you want it to work, they're gonna reset the drive. They're gonna ignore everything that's happened, reset it back to factory defaults, and run through the programming, and it works. If there's some sort of site where there's an emergency or something, or you can't get a hold of tech support, or the customer's tired of dealing with it and they're already past that, you can email me with what's going on, and I can get the RMA started for you. Or if it's a big time customer or something, you can also get a hold of me. It's just, it may be a little bit slower because I do things like this. So if someone's trying to get a hold of me right now, they're going to have a slower response time. But I can bypass that for you and work directly with Boston, getting everything you need, make sure a drive gets sent out, and make sure all the proper troubleshooting was done. And then one of the cool things is, for when you replace the control board, it is separate from the I/O board. So all of your wires don't have to come out. You basically unscrew this thing, snap it down, the control board comes out, put the new control board in, snap it up, and you're done. So there's no wiring, it's just the screws. Heatsink fans, capacitor fans are all replaceable. Keypad. Oh yes, if you're going to replace the control board, we recommend replacing the keypad, just because they need to be the same firmware. And if you're not 100% sure from the factory, the keypad on the back is not going to tell you what firmware it is. And so it's just best that if you're going to buy a control board, just get the keypad so that you know when you get it. Whenever you order a control board, you're not going to be able to pick the firmware. You're going to get the newest. You're going to get the latest and greatest. So having the keypad just makes sure it's going to work. Yep.
So, say in 3 years from now, you have a couple keypads for whatever reason. Can you take them and go backwards on some of the other drives if you had to? Like an older drive, take like a keypad off of one of these?
It should be fine, but I'm not 100% sure, so I'll test it and I'll let you know. But yeah, going backwards should be fine. Yeah.
Sometimes you can take the keypads off and go.
Yep. The keypad should be fine. Yeah, because it's more of a viewport, so it's not going to mess it up. But I'll test it on my own and make sure it works.
Can you field upgrade the firmware?
Yep. But the way we do it is replacing the keypad and control board. Like if you.
It's not done through software?
No. It's possible. We've done it, but it's like a 10-minute load process if your computer's set up for it, which that in itself is kind of a task. And so it's much simpler to just replace it, yeah. And if it's an issue where you were supposed to get the latest and greatest and you didn't, you can just RMA the control board back and we can flash it and reuse it. It's not like it's damaged. And so we'll just do like a credit swap.
Is there a special cable you need to upgrade it?
Nope. Nope. Yep, standard Cat 5. So this is kind of going over what we did before, but just in a little bit more detail. The COM card, this is the part number for it to get you your TCP IP. These are the relay extension ones. So there's one that gives you extra inputs and outputs, which is multifunction outputs and 4 inputs. There's one that's all inputs, so it's your 120 volt digital inputs. I believe that drive right there has that card installed if we want to look at it. It's not turned on, but it's on the drive. There's also an output card, which is 6 open multifunction outputs, and then you can get one that has a separate power supply. I need to look up what the rating is for that. My guess is it's going to be the 150 milliamp, but I'll have to verify. To install the communication card, power the drive off and let it sit there. You want to let the caps dissipate as much as you can, or at least to a very safe level. 2 minutes is usually low enough that you're not going to cause any damage. You want to remove the VFD cover,
which is just one screw behind the keypad. And then the COM card has this slot right here. So you want to be careful. If you do this kind of off, you can damage the pins in here. It's not super easy, but it is possible. So basically just kind of lightly put it over there, get it all leveled up and push down. It snaps right into place. You'll have 2 screws that mount it in, and that's it. Once you do that, you power up the drive, go into the COM parameters, and make sure that the drive will automatically detect it. You want to make sure it detected it. And then you can go in and do all your setup if needed. For Bluetooth, all the setup's going to be on your phone. And then the Ethernet, there's not really a lot of setup. You just plug and play and go. This is what the Bluetooth card looks like. We'll be able to see it once we take the cover off. I think we already covered all this stuff. This is upgrading the firmware like we just talked about. We kind of got ahead of it. It's just replacing the keypad and the control board. These are the part numbers for the keypad and control board. Like I said, there's not different part numbers for the different firmwares. So it's just whatever that part number has today is what you're going to get when you order it. We'll go over it. I think there's a slide that shows it, but there is a page in the manual that has all the replacement components and its the associated part numbers, and these are on that list. So common wiring issues that you're going to see. This is for basically all VFDs. If you have your incoming power and your motor separate, it's fine. You're never going to have any problems. Don't combine them. We get it all the time. If you start getting over voltage faults and things like that, one of the things to look for is that you might see something that looks like this, but in 10 feet they've got a trough and it's all spaghettied together. The VFDs hate it, and you're going to get all sorts of nuisance tripping. You can wire all of the incoming power to multiple drives through one conduit. It's fine. It's not going to cause any problems. It's when you start combining the outputs that you have a problem. So in this one they're showing 2, but this could be 3, 4, 5. You could have all your inputs coming through one and split off, but then each output needs to have its own conduit because that's what's going to mess the signals up. All right. If you come up to one of our panels that's a bypass, this is the schematic you're going to see on the door. What you're going to see is check marks for all the different options that were selected on that particular panel. These are the available options. They're going to be on all the standard schematics. If you have a custom panel from us, it's going to look very similar, but you're not going to have any of the options that weren't ordered. It's just going to be a cleaned up version of it. So most of the time what you're going to see is you're going to see it has a line reactor. You're going to see one of the transformers checked off. We do have a Fireman's relay option. I think it's kind of rare though. People don't order that much. Most of the Fireman's override stuff you can do in the programming. So that, like, this is if you're adding physical Fireman relay components.
Yeah, sometimes we do that. I just had a thing they needed that.
Yeah. So it's available. It's just not super common. And then almost all of our bypass panels are going to come with run pilot lights, fault pilot lights, and bypass lights. And then the Bluetooth is right here. So
Diagram in this book?
not of this, but I can get you as many copies of this as you need.
On the middle for the
Yeah, it definitely should be on this middle.
drive.
Yep. We have individual submittals for each different, each different setup, and all the line diagrams would be similar to this, just, more geared towards what the actual product is. If you're looking for a copy of a specific schematic, the part number for that is here. So if you ever email tech support or the engineering team, you say, hey, I need a copy of this specific diagram, it's here. It doesn't matter if it's a standard panel or a custom panel, the part number is always right here. It may not match the part number on that UL sticker, and it's okay. The drawings have their own part number. See if there's anything on here. This is what I was talking about with the VFD and bypass contactors. So it's got both contactors and they're jumpered together. Your VFD contactor is the one that's going to have a sticker on the back panel right here, and it's going to say motor 1, 2, 3. I think it says T1, T2, T3. That's going to match up with the contacts on the actual contactor. The relay logic I was talking about, we put the VFD contactor and the control relay in front of the forward run command. That's how we lock it And then all of our bypasses are 3 contactor as well. There are, other manufacturers, if people want to reach out and ask for a 2 contactor bypass. It's not something we do. We used to offer it, but honestly, we just didn't sell a lot of them. Most people want a 3 contactor because you get that VFD isolation, to be able to troubleshoot the drive by itself without having to take the system offline.
Well, doesn't make sense. Yeah, why would you pay for a bypass and then not have it be able to?
We never sell 2 contactor.
Exactly.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. Like you're asking for a bypass and you can't run it without the drive. Yeah.
So that's why we're standardizing it. They're all going to be 3 contactor.
You guys understand that? If you're working on a drive, a 2 contactor bypass does not isolate the drive from power.
Yeah. Essentially, this would be gone.
Yeah.
And so you'd always have power to the bypass and the VFD. And what we're talking about is the reason that this is cool is if the VFD goes down, our VFD is not tied to the bypass controls. It's separate. So if the VFD goes out, turn the MMS off, you can physically remove the drive and run it in bypass and there's no problem. You're fine.
So you can do replacements or troubleshooting and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And then, so the only other thing on here I would notate is we don't, this schematic does not have like a damper specific option. It just shows you where to wire it. It's going to be right here. It's hard to see on this, but basically terminal 3 to neutral is what you would power the motor with. And then we have a jumper installed that's JPD1. If you have an end switch that needs to be made before this thing runs, you just pull this jumper and wire the end switch, and it will lock out your CR relay so that in VFD or bypass, it will not run without the end switch.
Next one's 3R.
Yep, so it'll be the same thing. The only difference between this is a couple different options, like the panel heaters here. We got the fans on the schematic. All the other stuff is the same. Fireman's override, bad clipping of the jumper.
What's the ambient temperature?
40.
40 C.
Yeah. But well, you can go up to 50 when you start derating, but the standard is 40.
What's the low? The low is what I worry about here.
Actually, yep, it's in the front. What is it?
14 fair.
Yeah, I was gonna say 12. I was close. All right. Wait, go back. So the only big difference here is the EMI filter, just showing that it goes on the input before the line reactor. That's important. If it goes after, I don't exactly know why, but it messes. I believe it messes with the EMI filter. It won't do its job. And
You guys may or may not even use that either.
the EMI.
Yeah, that comes up a lot on like,
It's like dairy farms, right?
Irrigation
Yeah.
systems are like dairy farms because it, the mess with the cow tags.
Yeah, the cow tags use RFID,
Yeah.
and the drives can mess with them.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so it might not be something you guys ever run into, but we do have an option for it if you do.
See it in hospitals.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would make sense.
The only time I've had an issue with that was like a tech call, and a guy was mad because the cows weren't being counted as they walked by, and that was what he needed.
Yeah.
And it was like every time the drive is running, they just walk right by. It was a weird complaint. It was new to me. And then that's it. Yeah. So it's kind of the same thing. Oh, this isn't a custom one, but if you have a custom schematic, this CN number is what ties our engineering team to it. So do you guys do much custom? Do you have stuff that gets?
Rarely, we might be.
Yeah, like 4X stuff.
Yeah.
So if that does come up, just know that this CN number for standard panels, it doesn't mean anything. It's just whatever, we'll put whatever CN, it just means change notice. So that's in our system, what happened to make that drawing get created. If you do have a custom one, my previous role was in application engineering, so that will tie the application engineering team into this drawing. So if you have questions, or if you think it wasn't done right, or just whatever, that can email our engineering team, and that number is going to tie it directly to it. You can keep going. That's just the stop that was in it.
Yep.
And then, okay, so I think this is what we were talking about this morning.
PM stuff, yeah.
Yeah, so this is where we're going to start getting into like the slower part. That's pretty much the main presentation. We're going to get into some of the specific stuff that this can do. I don't know if it's all going to apply to you guys. The drive, the new firmware can do permanent magnet. I don't know if that's something you haven't come across yet, but it will in the future. They're coming.
You guys want to take a quick break?
Yeah, and this is the time we can take a quick break if anyone needs to.
Yeah, let's do
Okay.
10 minutes or so.
We're ahead of schedule. We can take a. Oh, I think I muted this. Yep. Okay, so that mutes it.
Muted the whole time. Yeah, it's going by quick. It's okay though. We can give him some more time to play with it and go through the app and do all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Hey, can you? I don't know if I turned it off or not. I hit the side button. Okay.
I can't remember if both lights were on or if this was the one that was recording it, so I don't know if the red needs to be on or not.
It's a Will question. Hey, Will, do both lights need to be on with this?
You can turn it off. Or,
We can take another break at 11. And then after that, we can just wait for the end.
You need
I did my way to that party. I love logistics, you know? You want a sandwich, you can have
Go till 11, do another.
I think we can get past this. I think like half hour, 45 minutes for this section is enough because I'm going to walk through that section with the manual. So this should take us to 11, and then the rest of the time will be Bluetooth and demo.
Take a little break, then do the demos.
Yeah.
Cool.
We'll have lunch at some point too, so.
Yeah, well, I was just saying we only have about 10 slides left, but 3 of them are walking through the manual, so they should take a little bit. So this should ride us through pretty close to 11, and then we'll take another break and we can schedule the lunches and stuff. But after that, we'll just be doing Bluetooth and demo stuff.
Got everybody back? Looks like it.
Think-
Cool.
All right, so
Power your bike back.
yeah, we're good. Double check. Yep. Okay, so for the permanent magnets, it's just the kind of next wave of motor control. They're more efficient. They're coming. It's going to be a slow transition for all sorts of different areas depending on where you're at. Franklin, the reason this is in this particular model is we have an in-house permanent magnet motor for submersibles that's released. So we needed the drive to be able to handle it. So in the drive, you're going to see 2 options. You're going to see a MagForce option that's our motor, and then you're going to have a generic setting. The Franklin motor is a very much plug and play. You just tell it what motor you have and you're good to go. The generic ones require a little bit more setup, but it's just like a regular motor. It just has more things you have to input. The permanent magnet motors are very particular. The drive has to know exactly where the motor is at all times, and it's just a lot more information that it has to deal with.
So hold on, you guys sell permanent?
We have one pump permanent magnet motor.
Okay.
Submersible, right?
Submersible, yeah, specific to submersible.
Oh, just submersible?
Yeah. But regardless of pump or HVAC, if you have a permanent magnet motor, as long as it doesn't require the encoder, some permanent magnet motors have a feedback to the drive that's an encoder signal. We cannot support that yet, so we can't do that. But any other generic permanent magnet motor will work. You set the set group up just like everything else. The application select will have to go to permanent magnet. And then you go to the motor group, and it's just like doing a motor setup. Like I said, it's just more details. It's going to ask you the number of poles, the type of motor. If you want to do an auto tune, the drive can set it up with an auto tune. But you have to do this without a load. So the motor has to be there without a load on it. If the load can't, or if it's just not realistic to get the load disconnected, you can do a manual setup. And then that's it. Yep, go to the next one. All right, so this is the kind of follow along. So the drive, the manual is set up into 3 sections. Well, the drive is set up into 3 different types of features. So I'm gonna have you go forward 2, and then we'll come back. So the first section is basic. So this is just all, like basically most drives are gonna have this type of stuff. How do you do hand auto, forward reverse, jog, step frequency, shutdown? This is all pretty standard stuff. So these 2 pages, the lower number is the PDF version of the manual. The second one is the actual one in front of you. And then I'll go through here and basically we're just gonna spend a couple of seconds on each page just showing you what the manual is gonna do to help you set these things up. Go to the next one. So we have basic, performance, and then the next one's protection. Just hit one more.
Go for it.
Yep. So this is what, I just wanted to show an overview of what we're going to be going through. And so those are the 3 different major groups that the drive is broken down into. So go back to the basic one. All right, so we're on 67. All right, so this is the page that's going to cover the keypad again, and then it's going to go over how to set up specifically your hand and auto and how they're different, Normally what we do is hand mode is not PID, auto mode is PID. HVAC's a little bit different because you don't necessarily use PID for everything. So what you could do is auto would be your automatic like terminals and 0 to 10, and then your hand switch would all be keypad, so that you could always pull it off the system and temporarily run it however you wanted. The manual has a chart of just your kind of binary on-off as to if the inputs are off or on, what the drive is going to see. Let's see. The HOA mode source, set 60, that's the one I was telling you about. By default, it's going to be set to the keypad. But if you have an HOA, we're going to set it to digital input. So that's set 60. If it says keypad, everything on the hand and auto buttons is going to work. Once you go to digital input, it's going to be looking for digital inputs that are set to hand and auto. We use M7 and M8 for that. MI7 and MI8. Set 61, oh, they added that. Okay, so set 61, when the drive was first released, if you were using an HOA and you hit the stop button, it wouldn't stop because it was looking for HOA control. So they added this feature that you can turn on so that if you're using the HOA, the stop button will function as a stop button. So that's just something to be aware of. It's basically just turn it on. And then hand speed ref is how do you want the drive controlled in hand. It's all the same stuff as auto, except there's no PID options. Let's see, COM card. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, there's a couple more for auto. So auto, so hand you have your keypad, your digital input. Oh wait, I want speed. So we have keypad, communication, AVI, ACI, and then AVI2 and COM card. For auto, same thing, keypad. Auto has up-down digital input, so you can program the digital inputs. If you have like a button, you just hold it and it'll slowly go up, hold it, the other one it goes slowly goes down. You can set that up if you want. AVI just like hand, ACI like hand, AVI2 is like hand, comms, and then PID output. So if you're going to be using PID, even for HVAC, you go into auto speed ref and you tell it to look at PID, and then once you get into the PID, that's where you're going to set up what input you're actually looking at to get controlled. All right, go to, so forward reverse is page 69. This is also where you go to see how to wire start stop. This section is for a drive by itself. This is not how you would wire a start stop if you have an HOA switch. It's different. You have to, for HOA switch, you have to replicate this inside of your relay, basically. The 1 and 2 or the FE, FS, that's where you put your start stop. So if you have just a drive, you can come here. It'll show you how to wire it and how to program it. There's a couple of different options. Most of what we do for start stop is the 2 3-wire FR and stop, which just means you're going to have the start, the momentary start, momentary stop push button. Jog feature is really just for testing. It is defaulted on when you it's defaulted to the F1, I believe. This is basically like hand. It's just a pre-programmed way to bump the motor out of your normal programming. Let's see, step frequencies. So this is for people that want the drive to go at a certain speed based on a contact. So they flip a switch, they want it to go 30 hertz, a different switch 50 hertz. There's no PID loop, there's none of that. Just if I push this button or if I flip this switch, I want it to switch to this speed. That chart, where we have 4 inputs, but we have 15 different speeds, and the chart just tells you the binary on-off of how to control each one. So if you wanted, for instance, if they had like up to 10 speeds, to get the 10th one, you would have to activate speed M, speed X, and not activate the 2 other inputs. And when you did that, the drive would pop up and say step 10. So it's telling you that it's on the 10th one, and then you would go into the VFD programming, go to set 10 and just set the speed.
Is this just for those permanent magnet motors?
No. This is
This is for everything, yeah. This is just the generic VFD options. It will work for permanent magnet, but it's for everything. I don't think the permanent magnet control-wise has anything special. It's just the setup. It's just a more detailed setup. Shutdown, basically, you have an input. If you set it to shutdown, anytime it sees a signal, it's going to shut the drive down. You can flop it between normally open, normally closed, and the two control options are automatic restart or not automatic restart. I believe if you're setting it up from a spec for a fire code, the code's going to tell you not to automatically restart it. They're going to want someone to physically reset it, but both options are there if you need it. Let's see.
What's that, like for if you tied in a duct detector or something like
Yeah,
that?
anything that they want tied into it that's going to shut it down, that's what that's for. The fire code would be like the duct detection, but you can use shutdown for anything. I mean, you could have a proximity sensor that if someone gets close enough to the drive, it just shuts it down. So that's just auto mode. So page 70, auto mode, this is what HVAC's going to use most of the time, but this is very kind of straightforward. This is just how to wire or how to set up an auto mode. It's just looking for an auto speed reference. You guys are most likely going to use the ACI or AVI input, and when it's in auto, it's going to say T/C or T/V to let you know that's the mode that it's in. Let's see, feedback. Yep, so it's just a basic setup. Your auto speed ref, for what you guys are going to do is going to be the TV, TI, or TV or TC. If you do get into a PID loop, it's also on this page, and you would basically go through, set your auto speed ref to say PID output, your auto run command, it could be digital input or keypad, it doesn't matter. You would go into PID mode, which is set 17, and turn it on. And then once you turn it on, you go into the next ones, the 18, 19, 20. You just go through the whole thing. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's going to ask you what type of unit you want to measure, what is the max range of the sensor that you're using, and what do you want to maintain. So
It'll ask you if it's inches of water column or PSI.
Yep. So for HVAC, you'll turn it on. You'll go to units. You'll say inches of water column if you want, or bar. And like, let's say you just like 15 inches of water column is the max range of the sensor. You put 15 in. You want to maintain, like 2 or 3 or whatever it is. You put that in there, and it's already automatically calibrated. PID is the direct PID is more for pump applications. So as the pressure goes up, the drive's going to speed up. HVAC's opposite. So we have PID inverse, right?
Okay, so that's the same here as well?
It's in here. And like we were just talking about, the drive itself is set up to go to sleep under the direct PID loop. So as the pressure is going up, the drive goes down. It says, oh, I've been operating at my minimum speed for 5 seconds. Obviously, I'm not needed. I go to sleep. For HVAC, because it's opposite, the drive does not understand that it needs to go to sleep at full speed or at a full signal. So we have to incorporate the output relay to look at the analog signal. And if it drops below a certain level, the drive will go to sleep. And if it comes back up, it'll wake up. So it's still automatic. It's just a tiny bit more programming. Let's see. So damper. Yep. So dampers are going to be on 72. If you guys want to mark the page or highlight it or something. Pretty self-explanatory. You turn damper mode on. It's going to ask you what do you want the delay to be. I think if you don't want to delay, you leave it at 0. Provides runtime, or just max it out, I guess. Okay. So it's going to ask you if you want a delay time. Basically, that's just a confirmation. If it doesn't see the end switch in this amount of time, it's going to assume there's a problem and trip. It's going to ask you what output terminal you want to use. So you can route your power through the drive, through an output relay to your damper, which will physically control the power. And then it's going to ask you what input you want to look for your end switch. So you got 3 things. You've got a timer, you've got your output control, and your input signal. And once you give the drive a run command, it's going to immediately close the output relay and allow, like if you guys have 120 volt going through the output relay to your damper, You give it a run command, it's going to let that relay, it's going to allow the power to get to your damper. It's going to sit there with a light flashing on the drive, letting you know that it's waiting for that input signal. Once it sees the end switch, activate your input, the drive's gone, and you're off and running.
Do you have wiring diagrams for this stuff?
I could probably get you one, yeah. I mean, we have it. I'm not sure, but I can get you something. Yeah.
It just makes it easy to send them guys in the field.
Can you write that down to get like a damper wiring diagram? I'm sure we can pull it for something.
And the PID one too.
Okay.
That you showed earlier.
Okay. All right, Fireman's override is on the same page. Same kind of thing. You've turned Fireman's override on, or you set one of the inputs to Fireman's override. It's going to ask you, do you want to run, when you activate Fireman's override, do you want the drive to automatically run, or do you want it to wait for a run signal? Again, it just depends on the type of fire system you want. Most of the time, if the drive is supposed, like it's smoke clearing, so like if the Fireman system comes on and it's telling it to clear smoke, you don't want a run command also, because someone might have the switch in auto with that signal not on or in hand, and if it goes to Fireman's override, the drive should ramp up. So you would set it to run without the run command, which means all it has to see is Fireman's override. If you want a double layer of protection, you can set it so that it runs with the run command, and it just means it has to see two signals. So there's one signal versus two signals. And then the new feature for this drive that we haven't had before is in Fireman's override, you can have it look at the PID. The way we had it before was Fireman's override was full speed. You just go full speed basically until the drive malfunctions. Now you can have it look for pressure. So if you are pressurizing a stairwell or something, it's not just going to max the pressure out and make it so you can't open any doors. And then the only other option for Fireman's override that's settable, oh no, we got more, okay. So there's a retry delay. So if the drive does trip when in Fireman's override, it has its own delay or its own retry setting. So the drive has a retry setting on its own. It's defaulted at 3 with a 60-second delay. The Fireman's override has its own, so you can change it to be faster. Just like the shutdown, the reset can be automatic or manual. You've got a PID set point like I just talked about. And then we can activate, you can have it so that it activates one of the outputs to go to a contactor for bypass. So we can use that in one of our schematics. I don't think we use it for anything, but then if you guys have just a drive where you're building a panel, you could also do the same thing where you have an input tied to Fireman's override, and once that gets hit, the output closes and your bypass contactor gets pulled in. Let's see, 73.
If I heard that right, if the drive fails for whatever reason, you can have it, instead of using the drive, it'll automatically change over to bypass.
Yep. Yeah. So like if you don't if you don't trust the drive or you want it to be across the line, you can also have the drive, instead of running itself, just operate a contactor so that it throws it into bypass.
But if you're in a, not that I'm just kind of trying to get an idea. So if you have, like, say you're clearing out a stairwell and fire situation, you could have it running off the PID to not overpressurize it, yet still pull out the smoke.
Correct.
You still get the doors, and then if say that the drive fails for whatever reason, can you set it to automatically change over to bypass?
No, it's one or the other. Yeah, this what we're going over now is more of a design thing. So you have to decide: do you want this to go across the line on a bypass contactor, so it's just going to flood the stairwell, or do you actually want to maintain a pressure so that people can still, open doors and get out?
No, that's fine. I didn't know if you said that it does automatically change.
It does not automatically. Yeah, it's one or the other. It's just an optional programming thing that you can use. Sleep mode, the pressure boost, that's purely pump application. The sleep mode part of HVAC is what I just talked about. We can wire a relay in so it goes to sleep based off of an analog signal. If you guys are interested with the water systems, the drive can boost the pressure. So if you're running at like 50 PSI to maintain water pressure, but the system is leaky and you don't want it to turn on every 5 or 10 minutes, it'll actually boost up another 5 or 10 PSI to go to sleep, so that you've just got a little bit more padding so the drive's not constantly just turning off and on. Let's see, pipe fill is another pump specific.
tank fill. Analog trigger. So this is one that's getting into kind of some of the advanced features. You can use the analog signal to trigger an input and then program the input to do other things like activate an output, or if you just need to look at it from a BMS system, you can. And there's pictures in here as to, for each one of these sections, there's kind of a picture that shows how it's, in theory, how it's supposed to work. This can get real complicated if you start getting really into it. If you guys ever need to do this and it's really confusing or anything like that, let me know, and I can set it up on one of these demo units, get it all nailed together, and then send the programming to you. But yeah, you could just basically set everything up based on an analog signal. So if it's below 4 milliamps, I want you to do this. If it's above 6 milliamps, I want you to do that. See, the source is just asking where it is. The two trigger types are lower and higher. And then hysteresis. So the hysteresis is just, if you tell it to turn on over 4 milliamps, and you don't necessarily want it to turn off right when it goes below 4, you want it to be like 3, just set your hysteresis at 1, and that's what that's doing, is it's just giving you a little bit more padding, so you're not constantly doing an on-off. Oh, frequency limits. So this is kind of tied, so this is page 76. So this is tied to the analog signals. You can go in and have the drive limit the max frequency based on an analog level. So this is really, we use this more if you have two transducers. You can have one running a PID and one that's just there to look at the analog signal. And if the pressure, we have people have it on the vacuum side and pressure side. So if the vacuum side gets too high, it'll actually lower the max frequency of the drive and still be able to maintain pressure. And so you can set up frequency limits with analog. You can use it for multiple other applications if you, basically it's up to you guys if you think it's useful. Level minimum. Let's see, dual demand is another pump. Tank level, frequency limit, dual demand, lubrication relay, screen clean, anti-jam, timers. Let's go to 79. Yeah, that's why I'm skipping most of this stuff. So then we're getting into timers. Okay, so pretty straightforward. There is a timer in there that's power on. All you have to do is set it, and or that's a run delay. All these demo units are set up with it, so you can actually see it work. If you just turn it off and turn it back on, you'll see a power up on delay, and it's set for 10 seconds. So basically, anytime you get a run signal after it's powered on, you can't run it before 10 seconds. And it just says power on delay. It tells you what it's doing. You can have a run delay in auto, so anytime it gets an auto signal, it waits that amount of time to go. You can have a signal that says if this gets a run command, it's obligated to run for a certain amount of time. Backspin, you can set it up so that you can't have more than one start signal, or you can't have back-to-back start signals within a certain amount of time. And then you have auto restart and auxiliary timers. The auxiliary timer is just a timer inside the drive that you can use to activate outputs for any of the selectable output functions. Go to the next slide. So this is hopping carrier frequency. So this is kind of another in the weeds one. If the customer is complaining that the motor itself is too loud when being operated with a VFD, I'm sure you guys have all heard the whine that can come. This is to get rid of that. It chops up the carrier frequency, and it goes between 3 and 5 and 2. Like, it just bounces around, and it eliminates the noise for the most part. Like, dramatically improves it. So this will not change your functionality, your sleep mode, or anything like that. This is just a solution to a noisy motor. Huh?
Noisy motor could also be a ground.
Yes, lots of issues. It's just that this is specific to carrier. I'm not even sure why. I'm not sure where this came from. I don't remember this being a complaint, but obviously they put a lot into this, so it's for something. I do know that we've had complaints. So they'll use VFDs on big boosters for apartment complexes. And those are the people that complain about motor noise, because someone's on the first or second floor next to this gigantic booster and they hear it every time it's on. I've also heard of people having hearing aids and the carrier frequency affects the hearing aids. They'll get like a squeal in there, and so you'll have to, basically, I assume this will fix that. Go to the next one. Protection features. Okay. Signal loss is what I was talking about at the very beginning. If the drive is set to look at an input for an analog signal and it doesn't see it, you will get a fault that says analog loss, or it'll say ACI lost, AVI lost. It will tell you what input it is and that it can't see it. You can have transducer redundance. You cannot have two transducers and then average the two, but you can have two transducers and have one be a backup, and you can have transducers where one is like I was explaining before, where one's the primary and the other one's an analog trigger. So the drive can accept two transducers. That's one of the benefits of having the ACI and the AVI being duplicate. They can do everything. The only thing they can't do is just average the two. We've had that request before. The PT100 is a temperature sensor. The drive can hook right up to it. Nope, it's just built right into the drive. And with the new firmware for 1.2, the original firmware was just the setup for that. The new one has wire length calibration so that you can adjust it in the drive based on how long the run is. High level detect, low level detect, that's your amperage. So these are, low level detect is defaulted on. I'm not sure about high level detect. Both fully adjustable. Basically, it's just saying you're above your set point. Let's see, 94, 95 should be.
Quick question on this PT100. Is that just motor temperature?
I'm not positive. Yes.
Otherwise, it's just a calculation, right?
Yeah.
So it can't take just like a regular temperature input to control?
You could, but it would be a transducer setup. You could. Temperature is one of the options in the PID. What was I after? 92. Oh, 94, 95. Just want to make sure. Okay, so the high-low detection is what we're using, what we used to call stall. So the high level, if you get above that, before tripping, the drive will start kind of stalling the load out and dropping it down to keep the amps down at your set point before it trips. So it'll try to keep it running as long as it can. Low level detect. Yeah, low level is just a trip. Okay. Overpressure is specific to direct PID. Basically, if the drive is not operating or if the pressure is way over the set point and the drive can't do anything to combat it, it's just going to start flashing overpressure at you, and it will eventually shut down. If you have the PID set up with boost, the overpressure has to get past your boost setting, and if it does, the drive will instantly go to sleep, so it doesn't keep overpressurizing the system. No flow, you can have an input set up. Basically, you just put flow as one of the inputs, and you can have a flow sensor come back to the drive, set up a delay just like we do the damper, so the drive's looking for proof of flow. You can also do that in HVAC. You can do that with airflow. So if you're looking for like duct flow and you want proof of flow, you can run it back to the drive. Broken pipe's not applicable to you guys. Basically, if the drive is running at full speed and the pressure just never comes up, it'll say that you have a broken pipe most likely, and start looking at the system. And then stall level is basically this. It's tied into the high level detect, and it's just asking like what your amperage is. Oh, here's the underload stuff. This is the dry well versus belt loss I was talking about at the beginning. That's the underload. All right, go to the next one. This is an explanation of what we were just talking about with the frequency limit. This is what it looks like on the chart. So you got 4 settings. You have enable. You have the value in units for the PID frequency. And then you have your limit for your low limit and your high limit. How's it set up? be. Where's the analog signal? Huh, okay, go to the next one. Here's the signal loss and transducer redundancy setup. It's all in the I/O group. So if you're ever going through the drive, the I/O is the inputs and outputs. Everything for inputs and outputs is in the I/O group. I can send you guys a PDF version of this presentation if you want, so you guys can copy all this stuff if you ever actually need to set this up. But it'll go through everything. So it compares both readings with the minimum and the maximum values, and it checks the differences in the two. If it detects that it's abnormal or different from the primary transducer, it triggers a signal loss, and it'll switch to the other one. If the main one then becomes more normal, like if you replace it, it'll run from the spare unit until the next start or power cycle, and it will do a check again, and it'll go back to the primary. If it detects that they're out of normal range, it'll fully trip on signal loss, and you'll have to reset it. Here's the timers, the ones that we kind of went over, but this one also has, we have a 1 pulse. So if you activate it, it'll just pulse the output. We use that for resets. When we have multi-drive set up, we'll use the output on a pulse so that if a drive triggers, it pulses to the other drive that there was a problem. This is getting into, like, if you have a PLC that's looking for a signal, you can use pulses. Let's see, off pulse, on pulse. You're good, you can go. This is going over the hopping carrier that we already went over. This is just how you would set it up. This is the auto restart setup for the drive. You would go into the protection settings. Number 10 is how many. The default is 3. Oh, and I was wrong. It's 120 seconds is the default. But you can range it all the way from 10 to 6,000 seconds.
So that's the amount of tries it will do in 120 seconds?
No, it will do that many tries with that delay. So if it trips, it'll wait 120 seconds and try again.
And is there a total time for
The-
all the restarts?
3.
No, total time.
Well, it's 120 times 3. It's whatever your time is multiplied by the amount of tries, but you can extend the retries or shrink it. So you can go all the way down to 10 seconds, so it's just rapidly, like you can set it to 10 and 10. So every 10 seconds after a trip, it's just trying again and again and again. But this is also tied to your fault relay. So your fault relay will not trigger until this sequence has exhausted. So if you're looking, like if you have another BMS system that's looking for if this drive is tripped and you have this set to 10 and 6,000, it's going to be a very long time before the drive actually signals the system that something's wrong. It's just going to be sitting there doing all of its restarts. So 3 at 120 is kind of a happy balance where it will retry and you're going to get a signal to your system fairly quickly.
A lot of the drives that we sold before, the default was like 3 seconds.
Yeah,
Restart, that's what it
I think the logic behind doing 120 is that most trips are overloads, and so they want to give the motor time to cool down before you're just ramping it up again.
And then, we can go over faults.
So this is how to set up the scheduling and the real-time clock. So if you hit the menu button and back to that other menu and hit down, that's where the clock setting is. You can set the time. These ones should already be set because the Bluetooth card is on there. I believe they've already been synced, but they're probably on West Coast time. Yeah, it's early. Oh, so if you do end up needing to schedule, use the manual. There's a lot of settings, but it's pretty straightforward. And in there, what page was the schedule on? Can you go back a couple of pages, Boston, to the one that showed the pages? Keep going back. Schedule.
Where's on the page you just passed?
Go back. Performance, scheduling, 84. So on page 86, there's different setups for the schedule and a chart of what it looks like. So if you do want to set it up, there's great representations of an example of what it's looking like. So it'll give you a setup and then what that setup looks like on a chart. And again, if this is something that you want to set up and it's just not quite working right, let me know and I can do a setup on these demos and figure out how to get it dialed in.
So I have a question on that. So run command. So it's only running when you schedule it, but you still have to give it a separate.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So it will follow the schedule so long as you have a run command present. Yep. Cool. All right. So that is it for the presentation. Do we have any last minute questions or anything? Yep.
So, in that frequency hopping, right, is that the same as switching the timing of it? Is that what that's doing? So if you have a noise coming out of your motor, that god-awful scream it does, you can adjust that? Is that only adjustable up to 5,000 or 5?
The hopping did show 5, but the carrier frequency is adjustable up to like 14 kilohertz. So you should be able to go in and adjust it. Yeah.
You can go higher if you needed to.
Yeah, I think the default was just using 5 as a reference, but the drive goes much higher than that as settings. So you could go above.
You're 6, 8.
Yeah, definitely.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Sometimes you quiet them up. Okay.
The only thing is when you start getting above like 6, you're getting into where you're gonna lower the overall life. But I mean, it's now you're
Some
what's
of
more
them
important.
out as all get out, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, I've heard some of them screaming. Yeah,
but it's a
they get.
trick off, you know what I mean? Customers calling you all the time, or
I mean, we have customers that don't like overloads tripping and get upset that the overload tripped, and we're like, what do you want? They want the motor to run. Just go ahead. All right, yeah. So that's it for the presentation. We can get the lights on, and then first, I'd like to make sure everyone can get connected to the demos. Actually, yeah. What time is it?
Break if you guys want to.
Yeah, it's 11. Let's take a quick break.